Was it a mistake for Don McGahn to speak speak so extensively with the special counsel's team?
So at the outset, I think it's important to note that this is not new news. We knew a long time ago, and the public knew a long time ago, that Don McGahn was going to speak with the special prosecutor's team. That is not something new. This way back when, there was a ton of reporting on this.
So Jim, I didn't ask. The issue isn't whether it's new or old. The issue is, was it smart? Was it smart for Don McGahn to do this and do it as extensively as he did?
So this was a strategy employed by John Dowd at the time and Ty Cobb at the time, who was the president's lawyer handling the government's lawyer, the White House's lawyer, handling the internal matter to the White House as it relates to Mueller. And this was part of their strategy. It was also part of their strategy to turn over 1.4 million documents and make a lot of White House staff available to the special counsel in order to speed along this process. Now, as it relates to speeding along the process, it's not wrapped up yet. So whether that was beneficial or not remains to be seen. But I do believe that no, in terms of jeopardy to the president, I don't see the downside to having McGahn go in and talk with them. And Dowd, specifically said that McGahn was a strong witness.
John Dowd did, in fact, say he was a strong witness for the president's case. The strategy is working. Ask Rudy. That's what John Dowd says. The New York Times is saying that the president's current legal team was surprised by the revelations in the New York Times that came out this weekend. You're saying they're not new. Even if they're not new, they apparently surprised the White House legal team, so much so that the president was at Bedminster making all kinds of phone calls and at one point told Rudy Giuliani to issue a statement that the story was wrong. Giuliani didn't do that, so it may indicate that Giuliani didn't think the story was wrong. And this isn't me questioning whether it was a smart strategy. I don't know. I have no idea whether it was smart or not. But I have read Sam Nunberg. Who's in with Steve. Steve Bannon thinks it's a bad idea. Sam Nunberg tweeted this over the weekend about the president's former White House lawyer, Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb is the worst lawyer on the planet, pathetic, dumb moron who voted for Hillary Clinton. And Chris Christie, another Republican close to the president, who was no slouch as a lawyer himself, said this.
It put Don McGahn in an impossible situation because once you waive that privilege and you turn over all those documents, Don McGahn has no choice then but to go in and answer everything, every question they can. It's bad legal advice, bad lawyering, and this is the result of it.
So your response to Governor Christie?
So here's my response to that. One, we've seen a tightening down now with Emmett Flood in the White House in terms of what they're willing to turn over. There's becoming more and more pushback. We saw it as related to John Kelly from the White House relating to their strategy. So there has been some shift in that. But as to Governor Christie's comments, I think it's important to note that this is an executive agency turning over documents, executive documents, and this is the White House turning over to an executive agency, documents that are subject to executive privilege. That doesn't necessarily mean that those documents go into a grand jury. That doesn't necessarily mean that those documents and those interviews go, before Congress. They're still privileged. The president can still assert the privilege relative to that information, the executive privilege. I think that's important to note.
I think it is important to note. I do also think it is important to note that both New York Times and CNN reporting that the White House did not get a full report of all the questions that Don McGahn was asked in these interviews. That's just interesting. I guess we don't know what it means, having not been part of those 30 hours of interviews, but it must be unsettling for a legal team not to know everything that went on and to find out this late that it was so extensive. I do want to get your take on something else that Rudy Giuliani said over the weekend when he really did seem to get completely wrong the information that's been out there for more than a year about the Trump Tower meeting. Rudy Giuliani incorrectly claimed over the weekend that Donald Trump Jr. did not know that this meeting to get dirt from the Russians on Hillary Clinton wasn't to be with a Russian lawyer. Listen one time to what Rudy Giuliani incorrectly said.
The meeting was originally for the purpose of getting information about Clinton. The meeting turned into a meeting
which in itself it's attempted collusion. I understand.
No,
you just said it. Meeting was intended to get dirt on Hillary Clinton from a Kremlin lawyer.
No.
That was the intention of the meeting. You just said it.
that was the original intention of the meeting. It turned out to be a meeting about another subject, and it was not pursued at all. And of course, any meeting with regard to getting information on your opponent is something any candidate's staff would take.
The key part of this bite, which we didn't play, was that Rudy Giuliani says she didn't represent the Russian government. She's a private citizen. I don't even know if they knew she was Russian at the time. They did know she was Russian at the time because in the email exchange to Donald Trump Jr., it was said again and again, this Russian attorney, the Russian government attorney you'll be meeting with right there. And another email, would it be possible to move tomorrow's meeting to 4 p.m. as the Russian attorney? So Rudy Giuliani is saying things that are not true here.
Well, I don't know whether he's saying they're true or not true, whether he had his facts right or not. That email that you've put on the screen seems to show that there was a Russian government attorney. What that means and how that's interpreted, lawyers are going to argue about. But I mean, I've said time and time again on this show and others that when Rudy Giuliani speaks, there needs to be some precision on it. There needs to be some, and it can't just be spin, and that spin can't change day to day. It needs to be precise, and he needs to be getting his facts right. It seems like every weekend there seems to be some issue that comes up where there's some imprecise nature in what he says, and that's a problem when you're speaking as the president's lawyer publicly about issues that are relating to this investigation.
Jim Schultz, you have said that for some time. Thanks for saying it again this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.